What is the difference between a bureaucrat and a plumber? The plumber actually faces consequences when the job is not done right. In part 1 of this video, we discussed the general roles that the government should play in a free society. This time, we will look at the more controversial topic of government involvement, externalities, which are third-party effects. Problems like pollution come to mind. Imagine a scenario where two parties engage in a deal and they end up putting smoke in the air that you have to breathe and that dirties your shirt. There might be nothing wrong with that if you have voluntarily agreed and were part of the deal. But this case is an example where you have been subjected to dirty air without agreement. This is a case of third-party effect. And in most cases with third-party effects, government has a role to play. The general approach when looking at examples like pollution, people tend to say that it is a market failure. And so it is market failure. When a company puts smoke in the air, which dirties your shirt, imposes costs on you, and doesn't end up paying you for it, it is a market failure. We could stop pollution right now by stopping many factories from working or never driving cars again. But the costs might be a little higher than the gains. Let's go one step further. In the same way you could ask, what is the right number of car accidents that truck drivers should have? Well, of course, it would be desirable to have no accidents at all. If all trucks were going 10 miles an hour between hours of 3 to 6 a.m., we might have no accidents. But the costs for the transported goods would go up. Until we took the wrong route of no-fault insurance, the truck companies would be liable to pay the damages to anyone they hurt. Therefore, they would be incentivized to hire drivers and drive their cars in such manner which would minimize accidents. No market failure would arise here because you can clearly identify who is hurt and who did the hurting. And so, you can make this a subject to a market transaction. But in the case of pollution, the transaction costs of entering the deal, identifying and making the factory that dirtied your shirt pay you are higher than the potential benefits. Most third-party effects arise because of these transaction costs. The general approach has been, since there is a market failure, no matter how minor, the government should step in. But this is a basic double standard error. We all know that there is such a thing as government failure, and that the cure might be worse than the disease. First, the very reasons that stop the market solutions also stop government solutions. A more important reason is that government actions have laws of their own, and when government steps in with initial good intentions, oftentimes the results are very different. Worth mentioning that government failures are much bigger. Think of Great Depression, Prohibition, welfare, or even a simple example when the government required all children's clothes to add tris to their product to make it flameproof, and every manufacturer had to do so. Few years later, government discovered that tris is carcinogenic, and all manufacturers had to take off their products off the shelves. An example of government failure on a large scale. Because of this, we must take into account that we should call for government action only after taking into account that you may have government failure and end up in a situation worse than you started with. Instead, society has developed many good solutions because market failures imply a potential gain and give the incentive to solve a problem. Think about tipping. How do we ensure that the person who serves you at the restaurant gives good service? We tip the people who provide good service and don't tip the ones that provide bad service. Yelp reviews are another mechanism invented by the society to help the consumer find a good restaurant and help a good restaurant to get rewarded for providing good service. Politeness serves the same social function in the society. Many point to scientific research being a market failure because it yields knowledge which cannot be patented or kept secret. So most of the benefits from research go to people other than those who did it. Therefore, there is no incentive. It is true that it's the society that gets most benefits of research. But it is not true that we have no mechanism to reward the scientists. We have universities, and universities sell education, research, and monuments. Monuments are what finances the research. If a private monument is built in honor of some scientist, oftentimes it would not be considered very honorable. One could say it's only done for personal gain or because they had money to build it. On the other hand, if Harvard builds a monument for the same scientist, it would be considered a great honor. Because research benefits third parties, and it is difficult to compensate privately, society has developed a system to reward people with monuments. Government-supported research might also have benefits to the society, but at what cost? A finite amount of taxes goes towards research, but how do we measure the benefits to claim that it was worth it? You must look on the other side of the picture. Every time government steps in, it has third-party effects as well. It must also be considered that the government will raise money from everyone, including people who will not benefit from the research that is being funded. If there were no interest at all in the private sector to fund research, most of us would agree that there would be a case for the government to step in. But since there is a great deal of private research going on already, how do we know that having more research at cost to the society is better? A good example is Henry Ford developing the auto industry. Had great third-party benefits on society, made it possible for millions of people to travel more efficiently. Does it mean that there was a case for the government to subsidize him? Not at all, since he had enough incentive to do it without the government. Elon Musk is another great example of today. Not only he's making research and progress in automobile and other industries, in fact he moved from California to Texas to avoid ridiculous government-imposed taxes. This does not mean that whenever there is a problem, something will come up to solve it. That would be too easy. There is not a single person that could say what the government should or should not do concretely. We can only try thinking in terms of principles, upon which we can make decisions. People forget to look at the cost of things and are driven to believe the intentions. If the intentions are good, the results will follow. That could have been justified when the government spending was only 10% of the national income, but now that it is almost 50% and the problems are worse, it is safer to assume that there will be government failure before market failure. On the whole, the expansion of government is really driven by three forces. People who sincerely believe in freedom but did not see the dangers of expanding government. People who do not believe in freedom and have a paternalistic attitude towards the society where they know better what's good for others. And people who don't really have ideologies but try to use the government for their personal advantage. All of us are willing to see government expand in areas that benefit us. We only object to paying when it benefits someone else. After all, most people in the United States and the world believe in freedom, but a lack of understanding can lead to those people supporting opposite policies. In many cases, there are no good solutions, and we must look at each case to identify the pros and cons. But we have to be even-handed when doing so and consider government failure as one of the outcomes. Generally, governments have been far less far-sighted and willing to play fast and lose much more than private individuals and private groups. I hope you're having a nice day. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos, and as Albert Einstein said, nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and the law of the land than passing laws which cannot be enforced.